Mike Judge's King of the Hill is one of those cartoons that tries to be different than most others and ultimately succeeds, though that's not to say that it will hit home with everyone. King of the Hill dates back to January 12, 1997, when it debuted on Fox. It became popular enough that it moved to Adult Swim, where it has aired for the duration of its time. King of the Hill ran from 1997 all the way until May 6, 2010, spawning a total of 13 seasons, 259 episodes. This makes King of the Hill notable as a pretty long-running cartoon just because of its popularity. Despite the cancellation in 2008 by Fox, the season finale was aired on September 13, 2009, thus giving the show a more proper ending. 4 remaining unaired episodes were aired in May of 2010, however. To this day, King of the Hill airs reruns on Adult Swim, so even though Mike Judge isn't planning on reviving the series anytime soon, it's still available for you to check out for yourself if you're so inclined. King of the Hill is animated, but it's most certainly not for children, similar to other long-running animated series such as The Simpsons, Family Guy, and South Park. However, I feel King of the Hill is more enjoyable than the latter through its demeanor of maturity present in the show through its overall focus on real, wholesome life lessons, as well as its unique style of subtle humor. King of the Hill actually has value in its writing, and it isn't content with simply trying to force a good laugh here and there, even though that isn't neglected. The show focuses on the Hills, your average American middle-class family living typical day-to-day lives in the fictional town of Arlen, Texas. The show is more of a sitcom than anything, though. It's very realistic and down-to-earth, as if it weren't a cartoon. Hank Hill, the main character, lives his daily life with his wife Peggy, his son Bobby, his niece Luann, his neighbors, and the rest of the world he interacts with. Hank is a very realistic and relatable character. He has a job as a propane salesman, he's a handyman around the house, and he simply strives to make a living like everyone else in the world. Before long, you'll forget you're watching a cartoon because of the realistic portrayal of just about everything in the show. Not just Hank Hill, in fact, all the characters on King of the Hill are relatable. They all act as real people do. They change as time goes on, and they experience a roller coaster of emotions in response to problems, challenges, and changing events in their daily lives. I can't say I have a favorite character in particular, though. With each episode that goes by, focusing on a specific character, you really sort of grow to like all of them over time. The show plays on one of man's age-old emotions and traits, compassion. You really do grow to relate to these people because the problems they face could really happen to anyone, even for characters I'm not particularly fond of, such as one of Hank's neighbors, Con. I have encountered an episode or two that has made me feel generally sorry for him and the situation he was in. But what I think King of the Hill really does best that sets it apart from other cartoons, animated sitcoms, and even from sitcoms in general, is its incorporation of key modern themes, such as the relationship between a parent and a child, friendship, loyalty, justice, tradition versus change, acceptance of fate, respect among classes, races, ethnicities, and backgrounds, and making moral choices against common dangers that plague humanity on a regular basis, such as the effects of drugs, alcohol, gangs, gun use, smoking, murder, and suicide. Yes, all of that. I'm not just listing crap. I've been watching this show since I was 15, a whole 3 years, and I distinctly remember an episode centering on each and every one of these themes. This harkens back to one of my main problems with the general trends of entertainment being followed on television nowadays. It seems like television these days is content with simply being shallow entertainment and little else. Comedy consisting of nothing but offensive or raunchy pop culture references and incorporation to the point of abuse of adult themes such as sex, reality shows that focus on needless drama and shock value, and simply an abundance of mind-numbing programming that reign supreme and plague the airwaves these days, in my opinion. Children aren't getting wholesome social values from the shows they watch anymore. They aren't learning to be mutually accepting of one another, what true friendship is like, as well as plenty of other necessary life values and lessons. This isn't just me wearing my nostalgia goggles either. Why do you think kids are becoming increasingly bitter and in such a hurry to grow up nowadays? Because television lacks proper programming that nurtures the heart, mind, and soul. It's as if children today aren't being allowed to enjoy their innocence anymore. The rapid development of technology is tricking kids into thinking they need to be more independent when they really are not developed with enough life experience to face such a task. I'm not at all saying all television should be educational, but SpongeBob and Family Guy certainly aren't teaching children to respect their elders for one thing, among important other things. Of course, TV does not take all the blame for today's youth and its ill preparation for the real world. Parents play the largest role, if anything. When I think about it, the world could really use more parents like Hank Hill, loving at heart but not afraid to discipline his child if he acts out or misbehaves. Hank doesn't need Bobby to love him back. He just wants what's best for his son, regardless of whether or not his son agrees with the methods of his parents. I am not at all implying that King of the Hill is the saving grace of television and humanity itself, for it certainly is not. The point I am trying to make here is simply that King of the Hill is different in a great way. If you need a break from raunchy comedies and poorly written sitcoms and are looking for something with a little more depth than most of what's being broadcasted nowadays, I can't recommend the show highly enough to you. But King of the Hill isn't some Bible in animated form. It still occasionally remembers that it is supposed to be entertainment. What I enjoy about King of the Hill's comedy is that it doesn't abuse pop culture references like, yes, I'm going to make that comparison again, Family Guy. King of the Hill's comedy is very subtle, hidden within the characters' actions and dialogue. You really need to be paying attention to the conversation in order to catch the bits of comedy when they pop up. However, I feel this method of comedy that is not obvious or straightforward won't appeal to everyone, which is why I said earlier that the show won't hit home with everyone. I can't defend the show to death and say that every little line of it left me in stitches, because they didn't. The show has a mature sense of humor, and when I say mature, I'm not implying sex jokes over toilet humor. Rather, you need to be paying attention to what's going on in the episode, in the situation, in order to catch the humor when it pops up. It involves a little effort on the viewer's part, in other words. And that's why I feel the show won't appeal to everyone. Some people just want to relax when they watch television and not really think about what's happening on screen. That's generally the purpose of television. King of the Hill doesn't exactly fall in line with that ideal, so not everyone will appreciate the humor it has to offer. As much as I respect King of the Hill's emphasis on modern themes and its beneath-the-radar humor, I believe that the show does have two minor irritations. The first is that Hank Hill is a very old-fashioned character when it comes to principles or trends. As a result, he seems to act bitter towards many people. It's as if Hank feels as though he's the only sane individual in a world of idiots. While that idea is well executed in the humor, Hank often clashes with others, be they main characters or not, and oftentimes this ultimately contributes to the overall problem within the episode's plot. When the main character is a consistent contributing factor to the plot's dilemmas, that tends to make him a less favorable character. The best way for me to describe this character flaw is to say that Hank acts like that old man who seems to hate everything about any generation besides his own. This is more prominent in the older episodes, not so much in the newer, though. While this no doubt gives Hank room for character development as he gradually learns to be more accepting of change, I'm sure many people will get a bit annoyed at Hank's constantly stubborn first impression of everything and everyone he meets. That's not to say that Hank is mean or a bad character, he's just a tad self-centered in my opinion. My second problem with King of the Hill is with some of the plots of the episodes. While they vary greatly and never seem to feel repetitive despite the show's basic premise, the wholesome life lessons or general level of suspense in the episodes differs greatly with each plot. To put it plainly, some episodes are more exciting than others. Some episodes are more heartwarming or emotionally engaging than others, and some episodes just seem a bit slow, dull, or somewhat boring. It would be great to have more consistent emotional appeal or suspense throughout the general progression of episodes, but the writer's efforts are appreciated nonetheless. Upon watching the show, there are going to be episodes that have more danger and are naturally more exciting to watch, and then there are going to be some episodes that are pretty boring in reality. And it's pretty difficult to tell which episodes will be interesting or not based on the description of the episode alone. So when in doubt, an open mind is your best strategy. If you can be able to sit through some slow episodes, you're bound to find some great ones. It's just a shame that there are slow episodes at all, and not all of them can be exciting or emotionally engaging. But then again, this is all open to interpretation, and it's not fact at all. Overall, I would say that King of the Hill is a show that is satisfying to watch. I often walked away from an episode feeling slightly more informed or emotionally compelled. It's a great feeling to have, and I wish more programs took advantage of this feeling instead of always trying to get a quick laugh all the time. The show is certainly not for everyone, but if you ask me, I'd say King of the Hill is at least worth watching a few episodes.